Yes, kings and queens. That's right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to TTALK 101. I am your host, Kennidi Monroe. Welcome to the very first episode of TTALK 101. And what does TTALK stand for? What does TTALK mean? So here's a little history breakdown. TTALK 101 stands for Tranny Talk 101. But because of the word tranny, I have decided to drop the tranny and just put TTALK 101. So back in the mid 2000s, my girlfriends and I hosted an Oscar party at my apartment in Chicago, Illinois. We were having fun. We made a video, put it on YouTube. It got a lot of attention. And me and my girlfriend, Reina Valentino, decided, why don't we start a little show called Tranny Talk 101, where we would dish the dirt on what's going on in Chicago and in the trans scene, in the drag scene, in the pageant scene. We would do all this stuff in queer culture. We didn't know what we were doing at the time. It was just something special, I can say. And if you go to my YouTube channel, you can see some of the old episodes of TTALK 101 and some of the things that we were doing. We were being very creative and very different at the time. So, because now we're in a new generation and a new time, tranny has become a word that is associated with hate. So many trans people, especially younger trans people, do not like the word tranny. And so a few weeks ago, I was on TikTok looking at some stuff, and a trans woman of color posted that tranny is a word that's used for hate, and that some trans people still like to use it, just like possibly queers. Gay people reclaimed the word queer because that was an offensive word at one time. And she was talking about maybe reclaiming the word tranny for trans people. And so for so long, the word tranny has been something special to me for the simple fact that I had this beautiful show for so long that was successful. I had different hosts after Reina that did it with me. I had special hosts. We interviewed celebrities like Margaret Cho and Coco Peru on the show. So it was, in a lot of ways, very special. And for me, growing up, I started transitioning in 2000. I started being around trans women at the age of 18. And tranny was a word that we used in the dressing rooms at the shows or around our girlfriends that was like terms of endearment. We would say, hey, tranny, hey. And now today we say, hey, girl, hey, all those kind of things. So for me, the word tranny means a lot more than hate because I've never had it spewed at me in a hateful way. It's always been given to me in the endearment from another sister. And when I say sister, I'm referring to the history in the trans movement. In 2000, when I started transitioning, you couldn't go on Google and look for things. We had things like that, but it was not to the extent that it is today for trans people who are transitioning. You really didn't have the access to a lot of things you have now. You relied on your trans sisters to help guide you, mold you, all those sort of things. And one person in particular is Reina Valentino. And that is the same person who helped create Tranny Talk 101. And if it wasn't for Reina, I have no idea where my life would be today. Reina was a Puerto Rican trans woman. She was tall, beautiful, outspoken, a true Puerto Rican woman, to say the least. Something special is that no matter where she went, she was dressed to the nines. Like, I mean, if we went to the grocery store or if we went she looked right. She always had labels, and her house was full of all these different. She had so many clothes. It was so special. Getting to know Reina. When I had moved to Chicago, Illinois, I didn't know anybody. Um, I didn't know how I was going to transition. I didn't know where to start, where to begin. I just knew that I needed to get away from Texas and starting to live my life as Kennidi. And I don't know how Reina came into my life. I think someone said I needed to meet her or talk to her. She would have information for me. And it was the best relationship I ever had. We had our ups and downs, like all relationships, all sisters. You know, we go through those things. But if there was a girl out on the streets and didn't have a place to stay, Reina opened her house. I remember many times I slept in her bed with her because I needed a place. When I was in an abusive relationship and I needed to get out, Reina let me stay at her place. That's the beautiful thing about sisterhood and about what I learned when I transitioned from so many trans women of color. My life is owed to all those trans women of color because they helped shape and mold me into the woman I am today. I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of their history, and I'm proud to carry on their legacy in myself when I walk outside and move through society and stand up for trans rights and do things. It's because of those trans women of color who got me there. Reina is no longer with us. She passed away a while ago. But let me tell you, not a day goes by that I do not think of her at all. And for so many years, I wanted to revive the show in some way in honor of her. Because I feel like this is her legacy that we started. And it needs to be carried on. And as we know right now, we're in Pride Month. The world is so crazy with Black Lives Matter and coronavirus and our political climate and all those things. And I think to myself, what would Reina do right now? And I know Reina would be the first to be putting Black Lives Matter and talking about Black Lives Matter and why it's important, and talking about all the trans women of color who are murdered every year because they are trans. So many trans people homeless who don't have the means that someone like myself has, because I passed through society as a white cis woman. My privilege has allowed me to do things that other trans women of color could not get away with. So when I start thinking about white privilege and I start thinking about my own racism in myself, in order to help the Black Lives Matter and Black Trans Lives Matter, I have to look at myself and I have to be an ally and I have to know that I make mistakes and I have to know that as a white person, it is my voice that can help move forward in some way the injustice that black people and black trans women and trans women of color deal with on a daily basis. I am proud to have been educated and shown so many beautiful things by trans women of color. So when I start thinking about my white privilege, I start thinking of situations that I've been in where with the police, if I was black or a person of color or a trans person of color, would I have the same outcome each time? So I don't even know what year it was. I was leaving Tenley Park in Illinois, outside of Chicago, with my boyfriend at the time. We went and seen Gwen Stefani in concert. And there was horrible traffic, and we decided to pull off. I said, oh, well, we'll just pull off here. I'll go to Lakeshore Drive and take it down. Not knowing that I ended up getting lost. I was on the south side of Chicago. 2 white people in a car in the south side of Chicago. We get pulled over by cops. They take us out of our car. And they tell us there's only 2 options of why you would be in this neighborhood. And one of them is you're lost, or the other one is you're buying drugs. So they searched our vehicle haphazardly, I guess, and not crazy, and then just patted us down, let us go, and then escorted us to where we needed to go, which is what I wanted to go, was Lakeshore Drive. A police car escorted us out. We followed them out of the neighborhood to Lakeshore Drive. If those were trans people of color, would that have happened to them? Or would they have been in jail or arrested? And that's where I look at my white privilege helped me out of a situation that a person of color would not be able to possibly get out of. Fast forward years later, I'm living in Las Vegas. Not homeless, but struggling. Sex work was something that I survived with at the time, so I was escorting. And I was arrested for solicitation in a hotel. It was a sting operation, and I was arrested with a bunch of other people. And when they started to escort us down to where they were going to put us in the paddy wagon to take us to the city jail, county jail, whatever it was, everybody was handcuffed and escorted into a paddy wagon where I was not handcuffed. I was put in the front seat of a cop car with a cop and followed the paddy wagon to the jail. Do you think they would have done that if it was a person of color? Doubt it. Those are 2 incidents where I think to myself that black lives do matter. And right now we need to focus on Black Lives Matter. Yes, all lives matter. Everybody's life is precious. But Black lives are the ones that get hurt the most right now from society and law enforcement. And we need to focus on them and help their movement. Yes, being a trans woman, I've felt hate and I've felt a lot of things, but I'll never know what it's like to be black or a person of color because I am white. Even though I'm trans, I am white. The color of my skin allows me to get away and do things that a person of color cannot do. So just remember, Black Lives Matter, and if you are a white trans person, a white queer person, a white person listening to this show, just remember that your voice needs to be heard. You need to listen to people of color, black people, listen to their stories, and help be their ally. Ask questions. It's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to find your own racism in yourself and internalize it and some way bring it out and for the good. We have to do it for all those trans people of color who have been murdered for just being trans or being a person of color. We have to do it for all those black lives who have died senseless acts for just being black. It's Pride Month. A lot of prides have been canceled. But I wanted to revive TTALK 101 because I feel like cis people, trans people, queer people need to hear the stories of trans women, trans men. I want this to be a resource for trans people to listen to when they need something, help. It's a place for pop culture, for queer culture, trans culture. We're going to dish the dirt about, TV shows like we did on the original Tranny Talk 101. Talk about music, talk about what's happening in our lives. And I hope that possibly I'll get to start interviewing other trans people and bringing them on the show and making this a podcast that you want to listen to for entertainment, you want to listen to for something serious, you want to listen to for just the hell of listening to. TTALK 101 is going to be coming back. And it's going to come back with a vengeance. And it's going to come back for Reina Valentino. It's going to come back for all those beautiful trans women of color who shaped my life to who I am today. This is for them. Life is too short. Life is too precious. And it is time to be there for our trans brothers and sisters and make this a wonderful Pride season. So Pride Month is, every June, and a lot of people do know this. Pride started off as a riot, and two women, trans women of color, started that riot. Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. Marsha P. Johnson was fed up and she threw the first brick punch at the police officers. And that ensued the Stonewall riots that lasted 6 days. In a lot of ways, we still have injustice and hate in our own queer community towards trans people, towards people of color, towards people that are indifferent. And we have to change that because people like Marsha and Sylvia didn't stop fighting when the riots were over. They did it until they passed away. So for Pride Month, remember the people of color in your life, the people that may be that T or that Q or that different person that doesn't fit the mold that people think queer people should fit. Pride is a celebration. It's a celebration of who we are and what we are. On my TikTok, I've been trying every day to talk about some trans pride history, my transition, different things. I'm focusing on trans pride, and someone goes, well, trans is included in the LGBTQ plus pride. And I said, yes, we're included, but a lot of times the T is silent. And you go back to the point where you think about the T is silent, but if it wasn't for the T, would the G and the L and the B have the rights they have today? Would marriage equality be here today without Marsha and Sylvia? That's what you gotta think about. A history lesson is that the words trans was not coined back during the Stonewall riots. A lot of trans people were considered DQs, drag queens, because that was what they were. You couldn't go out in public in more than 3 articles of clothing of the opposite sex on. Opposite gender. So you could, if you were male, you could not wear more than 3 articles of clothing that was female. So you would be arrested. I don't know who it was, but I remember one time talking to a black trans woman in Houston. They used to be at the bars. I wish I remembered her name. But she used to tell me stories about how she said cops would wait outside of the bars knowing that we would come out dressed and they would arrest us. And I asked her one time, I said, did you ever just think about not going outside the bar dressed up? Maybe taking it all off so you wouldn't get arrested? And she said, no. I did it every time knowing I was probably going to get arrested, and it was my way to protest. She lived her life. And I think about that. Think about my life today if it wasn't for trans women like that, who just kept getting arrested, kept getting beat up, kept moving forward. Just today could have the little bit of rights we have. We don't have a lot, but what we do have, we owe it to those trans women and men who changed it for us. And those trans people are trans people of color. So we think Marsha P. Johnson, and Sylvia Rivera for our pride, for our rights. And we got to keep pushing forward because they push forward for others. And now it's time for us to push forward for the next generation. I would like you to just think about one thing or two things that's pride to you. Digest it. Write it down. Think about it. And then think about, if you are white, what internal racism do you have that you need to fix? What things can you do to help the Black Lives Matter movement? What things can you do for Black trans women to stop getting murdered? What can you do as a cis, straight person, if you're listening, for queer trans people? What can you do if you're a parent of a trans, gay, lesbian, bisexual, non-binary, gender-conforming individual? What can you do to fix or help the injustice that comes with being part of the LGBTQIA+ community? It's pride, but it's a somber time right now, and we have to move forward, and we have to start listening. If you are white, you need to open your ears and digest everything you can. Educate yourself on the Black Lives Movement so you can help move the needle forward, so we can make change and make this a better world. I think I've had to listen to my own inner thoughts for so long, and I have to remember that I would not be the person I am today if it wasn't for a trans woman of color. And it is up to me to continue to fight for those people who cannot fight for themselves, or who, not saying they can't fight for themselves, but who are injustice. I know now that I, as a white trans woman who passes through society as a white cis woman, I need to speak up, I need to speak out, and I need to listen. And I'll continue listening. And I want to thank Erica Andrews, Raven St. James, Reina Valentino, Ashley Houston, Alicia Houston, and Fallon Fox for being trans women of color that were in my life, who shaped me, guided me, and made me the person I am today. Thank you. And I hope you come back next week for a new episode of TTALK101. It's Pride Month, so each week we're going to talk about something prideful and move this needle forward. I hope you subscribe to us on all the podcast platforms, wherever you listen to Check out me on all my social media. I'm at Kennedy on Instagram. I'm Kennidi Monroe on Facebook and TikTok and Twitter. And have a wonderful week. And we'll be back next week for more TTALK 101. Have a great and wonderful day, night, whatever it is where you are. And just remember, you are loved, you are beautiful, and you matter.